Hello, my name is Meredith Kutz, Professional Development Associate here at NACE. I'd like to welcome you to today's event, NACE Town Hall, The Impact, Successes and Challenges During COVID-19. We would like to thank Career Fair Plus for sponsoring today's program. Here's what current customers of Career Fair Plus had to say about them. I just wanted you to tell you how much I enjoyed your career fair this morning. A huge thank you to all the amazing support at yesterday's event. Our employers and students continue to rave about your platform. Since the virtual fairs were so successful, I may not want to do them in person again. When was the last time a company focused their support on you so you can do what you do best? And lastly, Career Fair Plus, make the most of your virtual events. Now, it is my pleasure to turn the session over to today's moderator, NACE Executive Director, Shawn VanDerziel.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our session today. We're so pleased that you chose to join us. We're really thankful for that. I am joined today by 4 amazing dynamic panelists I can't wait to introduce you to because they have really great information to share with you. And I promise this to be a really interactive session and lots of learning along the way. So we're going to dive right in. And what I'd like to do is to introduce you directly to our panelists so you know who they will be as we go through. I'm going to have them introduce themselves. So why don't we start with Lori?
Hey, thanks so much, Shawn. Thanks so much, Shawn, and thanks for having me today on this panel. It's such a pleasure to be here and share with our colleagues. My name is Lori Shreve Blake. I'm the Senior Director for Alumni and Student Career Services at the USC, University of Southern California Career Center. And I oversee all of our student career counseling and events for our 48,500 students and 400,000 alumni. And so happy to be here. I'm in the Central Career Center, and then we have 20 schools that either have a Career Center representative or have a formal Career Center in their different schools, and we work with them as well. So thank you for having me.
Excellent. Thanks for being here, Lori. How about Todd?
Hi, I'm Todd Good. I am the Talent Acquisition Manager for IBM. I cover all of our early professional hiring, both intern and full-time, for all areas of our business, including our core business, developer, research, quantum, sales, among all the other areas that we actually recruit for. So my team is split between a campus recruitment team and a digital recruitment team, which we started over 2 years ago. And I look forward to doing this.
Awesome. Thanks, Todd. Saskia.
Hello, everyone. I'm Saskia Campbell, Executive Director of University Career Services at George Mason University. So we are a public Research One university with multiple campuses across Northern Virginia outside of DC and one in Songdo, South Korea as well. We have 39,000 students and are growing. We actually saw a slight uptick in enrollment this year. And as you can hear from outside, there's construction happening on campus. We are the largest institution in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and we are ranked 15th nationally for ethnic diversity. About 35% of our students are first gen. Since we have a few thousand students living on campus here this semester, in addition to offering 100% of our programs and services virtually, we are also physically open 3 days a week to meet with students one-on-one in person. And due to our low number of COVID cases, I've just received word that we are expected to move towards 50% in-person capacity for the spring semester.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here today. And last but certainly not least, we have Francesca.
Hi, everyone. Francesca Jones coming to you from Los Angeles today. I'm a campus recruiting leader for Ernst & Young, which is a Big Four professional services firm focused on consulting, accounting, as well as strategy and transactions and tax work. So happy to be here today. We are responsible for hiring between 8,000 and 9,000 entry-level hires across our Americas region. My role specifically, we have 3 different geographies that we're broken into and one national practice. And I focus on the national practice, so I have the scope of being able to see the majority of the country in the process of our hiring. Responsible for about 2,500 hires that we bring in, focused in the financial services organization.
Excellent. Well, thank you for being here today, each of you. I'd like to just start by asking a really simple question to set the stage for everything else we'll go through today, which is just, how are things going for you? I mean, believe it or not, we've had almost 2 months of a semester or quarter, depending upon what your system is. And we put so much effort into the planning, and would love just to hear from each of you, just your general sense of how it went the last 2 months. And if you have 1 or 2 highlights you could share. And of course, we're going to dive in deep into a bunch of stuff as we go through the rest of our session. So why don't we start with Francesca?
I would say things are going okay. Still definitely adjusting, right? One of the things I think that we're noticing when we're back on campus right now is that we are seeing a slight decline in applications at this point. We're trying to kind of dig in and work with our various universities and colleges to understand what's going on, whether that's enrollment, whether that is just having a hard time trying to find us, various distractions, things along those lines. That said, we have a lot of grace at that point too. So we do know that we're going to have enough to fill all the pipeline needs that we have, but we are excited to hopefully get into our next tier of recruiting to start meeting some new candidates along the way. We are still, as a business, just getting our legs under us, right, from this pandemic. And so while it's stable, we just don't know how far we're going to be able to go as we still are solidifying some of our hiring goals and needs like that. So that's a little different for us too. But we are still very happy that we have needs as they are. We do potentially think that they could change, increase, and things along those lines as well as things continue to go throughout the year.
Thank you for that. I should add, and I'd love to just continue on and then ask Todd, similarly, our recent quick poll that's currently up, and folks are still answering, and I hope everybody in our audience who has a link to it will answer it so we get the most number of people participating as possible. But what we're finding, so we've got that going on, so that quick poll, and we're also just completing our job outlook survey. And that job outlook survey indicated that hiring is going to be down just slightly, almost flat for this next class that's coming through. But that's not really the real story. The real story is about 1/3 of employers that were part of that job outlook survey said that their hiring is going to be down towards the recession of 2008, 2009 levels. And the uptick is really being, or the flatness is really being driven by a few industries that are doing hiring and are going to do so pretty aggressively. And those are, in the pharmaceutical, food and beverage, food manufacturing. I'm just wondering, from your perspective, I mean, what does it feel like in your organization, let's say, a year ago today? Francesca?
Yeah, I would say that we're still staying pretty flat, slightly down.
Okay.
Yeah, compared to about a year ago today. And we do feel comfortable with that. Obviously, we just had an internship program. We were able to convert all of our interns to full-time hires. And so that's the piece where we're just trying to kind of let some of those things solidify as we continue to move forward throughout the year. So I'm not going to, we are probably seeing a slight decrease, but probably at the front end of this, we expected it to be a little bit higher of a decrease, and it's not as crazy as it is. Professional services has been able to stay fairly stable.
Great, very helpful. Thank you so much. And Todd, would love just to hear how things are going for you and highlight and commentary on that growth or flat or down.
Yeah, so far, I'd say everything's going really well for us. Actually, I think we came into, of course, not being able to plan for COVID. We came into the COVID. We already had a digital strategy that we set up about 2 years ago. So when we had to pivot from a kind of a campus agnostic situation, we were ready and prepared for it. So honestly, our applications are up from year to year. Actually, right before I joined this call, I kind of like to take a little glance as far as year to year comparisons at this date. And we're up about 50,000 applications from this time last year. We're actually up quite a few hires as well from this year from last year. So all in all, our numbers are increasing. Our diversity numbers are increasing as well. So I'd say we're doing fairly well. As far as our overall demand or hiring, we're pretty flat. We started off probably in August, September, being a little bit skeptical of where our demand was going to come in. It was slowly trickling in, and then it started coming in more rapidly, and we're back to where we were last year as far as our overall hiring numbers or where our targets are for this upcoming year. So I haven't seen much of a decline. If at all, it might be a slight increase into our overall hiring. So all in all, I think we're doing really well.
Okay, excellent, excellent. I'd love to turn to the campus perspective now. How are things going on the campus? Saskia.
Sure. I mean, I think overall good. People are tired, right? So we're slightly over the hump, but it's still very busy. Employer engagement has been pretty high for us, so we are thrilled with the level of employers looking to connect with our students. We are seeing higher student engagement for some types of virtual programs, and for others, like our career fairs, have been just a little bit lower than we would see during in-person events. But we've heard that the quality of the interactions, the amount of time that they're spending with each individual employer is up in the virtual space. So I think that is promising. We actually have our final virtual career fair of the semester tomorrow on a different platform than we used for the previous 2 fairs earlier in the year. So having to learn a new technology is always fun and interesting. And right now we're really trying to think through the right mix of virtual versus in-person services and programs as we look forward to the spring. But I think what we're most energized by right now is our focus on our diversity, inclusion, and equity efforts.
Excellent. Thank you for that quick overview. Lori.
Yes. Well, so we also have been very busy. It's like, I don't know if everybody else has heard this, but it seems like we're working harder at home than we were when we were in the office. So most of the events that we offered last fall in 2019, we're offering again this particular 2020. We've seen lots of great engagement in terms of our Trojan Talks, which is our information sessions. We've had almost 200 employers hosting those. We've had our career fairs. We have seen 5,000 students register for the career fair and about 2,700 show up, so about a 50% show rate. So that's been pretty consistent, but we've also tried to get our alumni involved. So one thing we did this year that was very well received, we used a Brazen platform, and I know people think of it mostly as a virtual career fair, but we used it for an alumni elevator pitch event where we had 30 alumni actually share with students, about 300 students, they role played the elevator pitch. And so trying to innovate, we're trying to come up with new programs as well. And we've got a lot more for 2021 that I'll share later. In terms of Black Lives Matter, we have addressed that. We have a statement on our About page that talks about we stand with Black Trojans, not only students, but faculty, staff, alumni. And we have reimagined our mission statement, our vision statement, and even added a value statement so that we are including the whole Trojan family. And again, also collaborating with all of our campus partners. Even though our campus partners are at their individual homes, we are still partnering and doing that great work that, you know, ultimately helps all our students and alumni.
Excellent. Thank you all for setting the stage for all of the topics we're going to dive deep into during our session today, because we're going to talk more about all of these. And Lori set us up perfectly for the next question, which is around diversity hiring. And we know that from our quick polls that it is a priority for our employers here, and would love just to hear your perspectives, Francesca and Todd, around diversity hiring and how that's going for you, if you've done something different this semester than you've done in the past, and if it's working, what your thinking is at this point. Todd, let's start with you.
I don't think we've done too much differently. It is definitely working for us. Our diversity numbers are increased. We've set aspirational goals. I wouldn't say they're targets, so they are definitely goals that we like to achieve within URM and female hiring both. I'd say our just engagement levels probably are where what's really helped with our diversity recruitment. So we've had several different nurturing events, or what we call our virtual career fairs, using our digital platforms that we've invested in as an overall company. So recently we had an HBCU homecoming event, which we touched upon all the different HBCUs. That was a mixture of our current pipeline and new recruitment, and also engaging both freshmen and sophomores, as well as we're starting to develop a diversity focused early ID program, which is going to launch this summer as well. So It's just the overall engagement, I think, is what's really helped our diversity hiring. I think my recruiters are really hands-on, making sure that candidates' questions are getting answered. We've implemented some office hours, virtual office hours for all the recruiters to have, since we can't have that face-to-face interaction this year. When they are reaching out to candidates virtually via email or whatever the case may be, providing that link to virtual office hours. Hey, if you have any additional questions, make sure you attend these. We can have a one-on-one video chat, 5-10 minutes, whatever the case may be, and offering those on multiple times throughout the overall week. So I think the engagement is really what's helped our diversity hiring overall.
Great. It sounds like you're working hard at it and trying some creative outlets like the homecoming event. Francesca, I would love to hear how it's going for you.
Yeah, it's been going pretty well. Diversity has always been something that's been at the cornerstone of our strategy, always a priority, to your earlier point. But I think that within the new non-traditional way of recruiting, we've been really able to expand a lot of the things that we would have typically done. So similar to Todd, doing some pre-ID things, trying to launch a new virtual platform so that we can really start to interact with a group and cohort of students at a much younger age than maybe we would have in the past. Hosting a few other virtual conferences from a gender perspective to really engage another cohort of students into things like technology. For us, audit is a big thing where we really need to see more females in the profession. And so we're hosting a 4-part series of events on that, which we've always done, but they've always had to travel in for it. We've been limited on the resources we've been able to do. And so now we've been able to expand numbers and really kind of think outside the box quite a bit. The other thing that has helped us a lot is just because so many schools are virtual, is that we just have a little bit better of a job with our placement opportunities, because we're able to connect candidates with professionals in other parts of the country at this virtual level, where it's not necessarily seen as we're not investing, right? Like, we're able to give them the same time and attention that any other employer would, but they're able to do that with people who may not be local to them, and may not have been able to maybe make it to their campus in the past. And so that's where I've seen the best increase in some of our engagement with our professionals as well as our candidates, is in that space from a diversity angle.
Super, thank you. That was a really helpful overview. And from a campus perspective, I'm wondering if there are things that each of you are doing differently in terms of engagement on your campus, and particularly with Black students with the Black Lives Matter movement. Lori touched on it, but I'm sure you've got a lot more to say, Lori. How are things going for you?
Yes, well, we're definitely partnering with campus partners, as I said earlier. So our Center for Black Cultural and Student Affairs Office, our Black Alumni Association, reaching out to those groups, reaching out to all the different student groups. One of my colleagues, Ryan, recently hosted an Instagram Live event with one of our student clubs. And so making sure that we're engaging the students, and of course, getting referrals in from different, people who are like, oh, Lori, can you help this person or whatever, getting all those kind of referrals for one-on-one as well. Is what we are doing. And we have set up a diversity, equity, and inclusion task force within the Career Center. And so it's not just serving our students of color, but it's also making sure our staff are well trained. And so we've done some professional development with our staff. The campus as a whole has offered this to the whole campus. We had a DEI series in August that our AVP encouraged all of our staff to attend. And then now many of us are attending what's called Equity Now through our USC Race and Equity Center. And then in addition to that, our in-house Career Center, we're also hosting professional development around this topic so that we are serving our students holistically and inclusively.
Excellent, thank you. And Saskia.
Sure, just to build on that, we launched our new 3-year strategic plan in August, and it is an outgrowth of work that we began several years ago. But we really see our vision as using our position and influence to break down barriers to social and economic mobility. And so the plan became our statement, plus an outline of the actions that we're going to take and how we're going to measure progress along the way. So our 3 goals are around identifying and eliminating any disparities that may exist in student outcomes, engagement, and satisfaction, enhancing intercultural development and social justice training of our staff. I'm particularly proud of the anti-racism learning group that we have within our organization. And then thirdly, to promote employers who are committed to inclusion and equity. We've definitely seen an uptick in the number of employers wanting to build their talent pipeline in terms of the racial ethnic diversity piece. And so now it's like, how can we help them take it to the next level? Because our students are very savvy and they're asking some tough questions. And so although we haven't had disparities in the past in terms of career outcomes, if we look by race, we are doing more and more to support our Black students during these tough times. We're strengthening our relationship, as Lori said, with identity-based student organizations, working with our colleagues in the Center for Culture, Equity, and Empowerment, being more present at community events to show our support and solidarity, providing tools to help students assess how serious the commitment that an employer has around DEI, and providing those consultative services to employers on how to enhance their strategy. But to kind of address something that Francesca mentioned earlier about where are the students, we have positions that aren't getting applicants, or we're just not seeing the same level of engagement at events. We've been hearing that from employers, and for the Black students in particular, they're feeling the whole range of emotions, right? They are overwhelmed, they're distracted, they're tired, they're angry, and they are scared between the racial violence that is happening and COVID. They're not coming out, and they are what we're seeing really turning to people who they already know, turning to folks who they trust. And so we have really doubled down on our efforts to engage faculty and staff through our Career Influencer Network, so that we are eliminating the barrier to career information by embedding it in the classroom and in the student experience. So we are equipping faculty and staff with tools, with resources, with key messages. We're doing cross-training of our success coaches and academic advisors so that we're able to reach all students.
Yeah,
Excellent.
Shawn, I would add too that we have a link actually to one of your great articles, 5 career services to offer a starting point to address racism. We have that link. So I encourage our colleagues to actually link to that wonderful article. It was the June 10th article talking about how to address racism and what we need to do. Also, every year we do in the fall a diversity meet and greet where we invite diverse students to come and meet with employers. And so we hosted that virtually as well this fall. That's something that's well received also. So I wanted to add that.
Excellent. And it sounds like, Saskia, I appreciate, I think that we're going to be finding a lot more of this where schools are applying pressure to the employers about their stances on things like anti-racism, racism, around diversity hiring, what they're doing in their organizations, so that you can support the students and you're supporting employers that uphold the same values, right? And I know the particular organizations that we have here are doing a lot in this realm. And so that's a great thing for these employers, but there are many that aren't, right? So keeping track of those and understanding what folks are doing is really important in this environment. Absolutely. We've got a lot to cover, so I'm going to move us on to another topic, which is around technology, because I know a lot of people are really experimenting with a number of things, doing a number of new things. Some of it's working, some of it's not, some of it you wish things would change really fast. And I'm just wondering, from each of your perspectives, what's working for you in terms of these platforms, and what's not working for you right now? And how do you wish it would evolve or change if there is something that's not working quite so well? Why don't we start with Saskia this time?
Well, I think Zoom fatigue is real, right? We feel it. I know I'm exhausted at the end of the day. And so I think that's the biggest challenge in this virtual space, is that there's no distinction between class when it's a video format, work when it's a video format, and virtual events and career fairs when at the end of the day they kind of look like this, on video. And so I think if hopefully the technologies will continue to innovate and become interactive and engaging and just have some distinction between other types of virtual things that people are doing to make them more exciting. Because I think that's why we're seeing, if we're seeing a drop off in engagement in virtual events, it's that it all looks and feels the same to students. And so with that said though, the virtual platforms do expand access. And so we've actually seen a double attendance at our government industry week, for example, than we have when we've done it all in person in previous years. We've done more with social media. So Instagram takeovers by employers so that they can really give students a view into a day in the life of someone who works in their organization through pictures and videos. And then we've done some fun things with students like a paint your dream job activity where we mailed students the art supplies to their home so that from a distance they could participate in this virtual event, but all be connected because they were working on a project together at the same time. And so we're doing as best we can, but I think we're probably going to see a drop off as we move into the new year, just because people are going to be tired of being on video.
Yeah, Saskia, I know earlier, and then there were a number of questions regarding it. I think you mentioned that you had tried a couple of different platforms, and I think that there were some questions around that. Just, maybe you could explain why you were going through platforms, and is there one that was working for you, or was there a difference? What were you seeing?
Yeah, I think we're really trying to solve for the drop off in students who register for a virtual event and actually show up on the day of. And what I'm hearing is that 50% employers is okay, and you're not going to hold it against us. I mean, that's our big concern is we're used to seeing thousands, and now we're seeing several hundred. And so just wanting to close that gap. And so we are trying different platforms, one where it's just open versus pre-scheduled where students are signing up in advance to meet with employers either individually in a group setting.
Gotcha. Have you noticed, is it the same pattern that you've noticed when you've done that experimentation?
Tomorrow's the day, we'll see.
Okay.
I'll let you know. But yeah, right now we're tracking about 40 to 50%.
Okay. So, that's a good question. Then let's ask the employers, since you raised it, which is, and it's real because it's in our quick polls right now, by the way. How is career fair participation going? And the schools are reporting that the drop-off rate is about 50%. So it's 50% drop-off from those that register to those that actually attend. And schools are concerned about that because what does that mean for the employers? And how are the employers perceiving that? So would love to turn to our two employers to ask that question before we continue on with platforms. How do you feel about the attendance, and what does that mean for you in your recruitment? Todd?
That 50% is right on about the mark. Even for our internally hosted events, we factor up the different drop-off rates as far as percentage when we are inviting candidates to even our own internally hosted events. So you factor in, I got to over invite to actually hit my target number. So it is about a 50 to 60% ratio above what you actually want to hit the mark to actually attend. So no, it's definitely not something we would ever hold against a university at all. I think and a lot of times we don't even see that effect, to be completely honest. Like for the virtual career fairs, a lot of them are one-on-one signups. So you have candidates that, of course, that are signing up for your one-on-one session. So if all those students, and maybe 20 at a given career fair, depending on how many representatives you have, we don't see that 50% drop-off rate necessarily where it's the whole overall event. So we don't see if you have 3,000 students and 1,500 show up. If we only have 20 sign-up slots and 18 of them show up, we're definitely not seeing that 50% drop-off rate. So we don't see the grand scale that you all may see as overall universities. But it's kind of where we are. Honestly, and seeing that 50%, as long as you're hitting that, honestly, there's a lot of universities that I've seen that hit way below that mark. So if you're hitting 50%, I'd be very proud of that mark, because you're right on average or above average in that regard.
What I'm hearing you say too is that individual sign up works. So you appreciate that you can have the individual meetings with the students, and that part's what's coming through. So it's meeting your expectation. Is that right?
Exactly. I mean, and that's one positive of the virtual career fairs that we have, where you're actually have those one-on-one conversations, but you are able even to, in some platforms, invite the candidates that you want to speak with.
Mm.
You have a view of who you're going to speak with even prior to the event happening. Candidates can upload their resume prior to the event. So your representatives are fully prepared before they even talk to the student. They know how they're going to go into it, possibly instead of where you have that physical career fair where a student hands you the resume and you're basically in that 2 to 3 minute conversation right on the spot and kind of navigating depending on the interaction levels of the student, you're actually be able to prepare for it. So that's one positive I see out of the virtual career fair. You can invite candidates to those one-on-one sessions. You are able to prepare and you're able to see the types of candidates or the candidates that you are going to fit. And some career fair platforms actually let you put specific targets as far as who can sign up. So certain majors, certain GPAs, a foreign national, visa sponsorship, like those are knockout questions on some platforms that you can put, and the candidate doesn't meet that criteria, the student can't sign up for your one-on-one session. So there's a lot that are positives of the virtual career fair that we're currently experiencing.
Okay, great. And Francesca, how about for you?
Yeah, I would say we would give a lot of grace to that. A lot of the same comments that Todd mentioned, right? We usually have people who are signing up for us to talk to us and things like this in this virtual career fair platform. So I see where our professionals are loving it because they're being able to have more of these one-on-one conversations with candidates who are very serious with us about us. I also recognize that is a big piece because we just have a strong brand, right? And so the way it affects us is a little bit different than the way it may affect other employers who might be just trying to build their brand in the current state. I think another piece though that I have also picked up on is that students are still savvy enough to know if they don't meet us at a career fair, they can still figure out ways to apply, right? And so they might just be jumping straight to the application. And there may have been a time when meeting someone at a career fair may have been like, oh, I met this person, I want to make sure I see them through the interview process. It might be a little bit different this year where we are really starting with the resume pulls. And so just the simple fact that they've been able to apply is really their first entry step with us versus meeting us at a career fair and going through the process. So students are getting a little savvier, which is also great. And so I think that's a little bit of a different experience that we're having as well too.
So you're finding that students are actually changing their strategy, and for you, perhaps that face-to-face meet and greet at the beginning isn't quite as important right now.
I would say that it's definitely shifted for us. I would say it's still something we miss, we would think is important, but we're still seeing their application, right? And we're still being able to look at their qualifications on paper and then start the relationship a little bit later in the process than we would have beforehand.
Gotcha. Okay, very good. And Lori, we'd love just to hear that technology question and issue on your campus. How's it going? What's working for you? What's not?
Yes, well, I agree with Saskia that people definitely have Zoom fatigue. And so what we have done at USC, we're looking at other platforms of which to host potentially something that we're planning in 2021 is a financial literacy conference. We did host it actually through Zoom in spring of 2020, but we're going to use a different platform now. So the technology we're going to use is something called 6Connects. And we recently used it for Trojan Family Weekend. And so we're going to use it not just for that particular program, the Financial Literacy Conference next year, but we're also going to use it for our PhD conference. We do an annual PhD conference as well as postdoc conference. And so we're going to use it for that as well. Also because it's virtual, possibly having it over many days. Right now, USC is all virtual for fall, and we won't know until November 1st what's happening in terms of our spring semester. But that's definitely one technology. And another technology, because again, I sit on the career counseling side, that we're using is VMOC for resume critiquing. And so they have a product called Smart Resume. And previously we just had it for a couple of our schools, and now we implemented it this fall for all students. So they'll be able to 24/7 get that AI critiquing of the resume and improving and suggestions for improving that. So we're using that technology as well. And then of course, we recently launched the Trojan Network powered by People Grove. So I love the feature that students can live chat with alumni and get information about careers and set up informational interviews and things like that. So those are some of the technologies that we're looking at. Really excited to work with 6 Connects in the spring.
Yeah, I mean, it's the experimentation is just going to continue, right? As all of us learn more, what's working, what's not, all of that. So it's pretty interesting. One more before we move on. I'm just wondering, not that it's technology necessarily, but I'm wondering, because Todd touched on it earlier, and that's this notion of employers not necessarily, well, still doing career fairs, but also doing things on their own. That's a little bit more widespread, like information career fair like sessions on their own. We're seeing these, this becoming really popular right now. And I'm just wondering, Francesca, Todd, how are you guys doing these kind of more mega events outside of what career services is doing?
We definitely are. And we're running those advertisements through all the organizations that we would target, right? And very often, sometimes we're in multiple schools on a campus. And so it allows us to highlight all of our various opportunities versus just being narrow in a business school or in an engineering school. I will say too, being in this virtual space, we're having the ability to kind of merge certain things by schools, right? So that we can really get our top of the top best recruiting professionals out there to really explain what they do. And so we might have multiple schools attend one of these information sessions type bigger fairs that we might have, just because it highlights all of our opportunities with the best people really talking about the things that they do.
So are you coordinating those with the schools, or are you just advertising to the schools and the students?
We're advertising to them.
Okay, gotcha. And Todd, how are you going about this?
Yeah, very similar approach. So yeah, we're having larger scale events that will cross over multiple schools, trying to be more focused. So I think similar to what Francesca was saying, you may have a consulting specific one, which is going to spread across all multiple different schools that will be able to feed in. So we have the best of the best that are attending that event. We actually did the same kind of approach, even with a physical approach last year as well. We had regional events, and Saskia, as far as George Mason was invited to one of them last year, actually, where we hosted one in Washington, D.C. We actually bused students to one centralized location from about 10 different schools. So we've had these types of events in a physical presence, but yeah, we continue to do it in a virtual presence. We have several, whether there are nurturing or keep warm campaigns where we're inviting our current pipeline from multiple different schools, but a focused approach. Maybe it's our marketing roles or whatever the case the roles may be, inviting to them. But yeah, we're just advertising on the events, or we're just inviting the students directly, where a lot of the events that we're hosting, they're not open. So there isn't necessarily the advertising on campus. It's more direct invite to the specific students that we want to invite to the events.
Gotcha. I see one of our, someone commented in our chat to us about the fact that with some employers that are hosting these kind of mega sessions, they're finding that some students are being left out, particularly those with disabilities, because there isn't the access to interpreters for those folks that, or closed captioning or other kinds of things that might need to happen. And so, that's certainly, I would encourage all those employers who are listening to that, take the competitive edge, do that, make those sessions accessible. And by doing so, you certainly will have a market of folks and prove that you are an employer for students with disabilities. And I'd love to hear from Saskia and Lori, just hearing about how these sessions are happening outside of maybe some of the traditional things that would happen on campus. How do you feel about that? Saskia? Either of you?
I lost my mouse.
Oh, sorry.
I mean, mixed feelings. I mean, obviously, I like the increase in access, and there are now employers that are inviting Mason students to these events, and they wouldn't have reached them otherwise because they weren't coming on campus. We weren't one of the schools that they were recruiting at. On the other hand, we're losing out on just knowledge, the data, like how many interactions our students are having, who's being served, who's not, if we can't track it, so that's the piece I think in particular that we're missing out on.
Lori, any insights?
Yeah, we're happy, I know Todd mentioned that he has specific maybe students that he's targeting. And so we get a lot of requests in. I know Amazon's having an event this week and they were specifically looking for students of color. And so they sent it to me and then I immediately send it out to all of our cultural centers on the student side, as well as our affinity groups on the alumni side. So we have our Black alumni, our Asia Pacific alumni, our Lambda alumni, and Latin alumni populations. And so, getting that word out to those groups is really, really important so that they can get the talent in that they're looking for. So I'm happy to get the word out because in my area, we're just trying to get the opportunities out to the students. And so from that point of view, and then we even have on our website something that says, don't see your event on our website, add it. And so we'll even send the link to an employer if they want to open it up wider. But if they're very narrow in their focus, that's fine too. They email us and we send it out to the population that they're looking in particular to recruit. So
Great. So bottom line is you'd love to continue to partner is the ideal. So
definitely.
figure out those continuing ways so that you can track it and you can put some metrics behind it too, and you can understand what the outcomes are, right?
Exactly.
So that makes a lot of sense.
And then if they end up getting a job, we do a graduation survey through 1220, and so we'll get that data at that point. That's another way to capture that data at the time.
Awesome. Hey, let's talk just a couple minutes about internships. Would love to hear from our employers kind of what you're planning right now. Are you for in-person or virtual? What's going on? Francesca?
Well, I think across the country, we only have 3 offices that are currently open. So as we plan for upcoming winter, spring internship, we have announced that it will be fully virtual. We just had our first virtual internship this past summer, and I was probably one of the most impressed with how well it went. So I am very excited that we're able to do this again, and we have a little bit of a head start with it. We're not to the point that we're ready to announce what our summer internship will look like yet. It will probably be very based on whether or not our offices are starting to open back up or not.
Gotcha. And do you have a timeline by which you think you're going to start making those decisions, and how you're going to communicate with students?
One yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And Todd, how about you?
Yeah, we're in a very similar boat. Honestly, we have not announced yet as far as our summer internship program. I know I was on a call the other day. It was open for discussion where we're thinking. I think it's probably leaning that way, more becoming virtual again. Just seeing the success of last year's season, which was astronomical. I mean, it took off. A lot of planning went into it, but it was a quick pivot, and the feedback from both the candidates and also the hiring managers was very successful. The one thing that we lost out in last year being completely virtual is we usually host a larger grand scale event for all of our interns. The year before we had all of them go to Disney for multiple days for not only meetings and such, but also got to play, of course, at Disney. So that's the one downfall. So we are exploring, can we still have a physical large event if we go all virtual? So there's multiple different things we're looking into. But yeah, I think we probably will announce within the next month or so what that decision will be. Very similar. We only have a few offices open, and it's only for essential employees currently at this time.
Sure. Well, similarly, I'd love to ask Lori and Saskia about that virtual job search process and the potential of continuing virtual work, whether it's that internship experience we just talked about or full-time work upon graduation potentially. Are you changing your strategies from a preparation perspective with your students? Are there things that you've put into place that are a little different, or is it business as usual? Lori, would you like to?
Sure, I'd be happy to start. So this fall, we started a new webinar series, and we actually hosted it at night at 6 at night. Now at 6 at night, I don't know if we'd get 50 students at an event, but we decided to host it at night. And we have addressed some of those topics, Shawn. One was working remotely and how to work remotely, and how to onboard, how to get hired, how to interview, get hired, set up and create great working relationships remotely, virtually. How do you do that? And so we had a session on that in particular. We also, and what we try to do is have them employer-led, so not necessarily led by our team, but by the employers, because that is really relevant for our students. And so another one we recently did, we had a recruiter from Guest talk about how to do informational interviews virtually, how to interview virtually, and what that all entails, looking at the camera and dressing the part and showing up early and making sure your Wi-Fi is working and putting the dog in the backyard or wherever, or having somebody babysit the dog so he doesn't bark. So, we've been trying to definitely address those kinds of topics with our students. And we did that this summer as well. And we will continue to do it because, we're living in uncertain, unknown times. And so we need to prepare our students well. And so that's something that we've addressed. And we think that offering these events kind of in the evening and different times also is great for engagement. The other thing that I would say is that even in person and virtual, on our website, we have something that says request a Career Center speaker. And we really want to empower our students to create their own career programming. And so we've had about 30 requests from different students and faculty who are either wanting to address a particular topic around career readiness and what's relevant and what's happening in today's times. And so we're so pleased that we continue to get those requests. And obviously, I send out my team to make those presentations. So that's really good as well. We like to think of those events as kind of for students by students with a career focus. And so we're happy about that engagement.
Yeah, I love that idea. Thanks for sharing that. And Saskia.
Sure. So we are doing many of the same things. Our video practice interview day, where we've had employers do mock interviews via video with students, was very popular this year. We did sessions on how to network while social distancing, but I think the thing that we spend the most time on is how to prepare students to navigate a virtual career fair, because many of them had never attended one before. So we were doing workshops and peer-to-peer Ask Me Anything sessions and created tip sheets. But then we also did the same for faculty and staff, because we asked faculty and staff to promote the fair for us. But if they've never been to a virtual fair, they didn't feel like they could speak to it, answer questions, or prepare students to attend. And so we did just as many sessions and outreach and information to faculty and staff to give them a glimpse into the system, and so that they knew kind of how to best prepare students for that kind of an event. One of the things that I'm really interested in following moving forward is, what is professionalism anymore in this virtual space, right? I mean, the lines between home and work, personal and professional, have never been blurred as much as now. And so combined with diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts that talk about bringing your authentic self to work. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this evolves. And we've had some pretty interesting conversations within our organization around the bias and professionalism standards. And so I think one thing that we're going to do moving forward is continue to broaden out the definition of what's considered professional.
Gotcha. Well, let's ask our employers, right? Let's see what they're doing or not doing. Todd.
Honestly, it's a fantastic question as far as what is considered professional, what is not, as we move forward in this current state. Honestly, I think the day of the suit and tie is definitely gone. But I think there are some roles that are more client facing. So I think it depends on the type of role you're applying for, honestly. Within IBM, we have all kinds of different roles. So it really would depend on, and it's not necessarily once you're in IBM, it's when you're preparing for like an interview and such like that. It's depending on the type of role that you are applying for and how you're approaching it. I think that's where the professionalism or how you address would really be more taken into consideration. I think once you are within the overall business, once again, that would kind of depend on the said role. I mean, if you are being face-to-face with a client, you will dress differently than when you do it on a normal day-to-day, especially in the virtual world where you may be in a t-shirt on a given day. I think our dress code has relaxed quite a bit being virtual. We expect our employees not to be laying in bed while they're on a Zoom call by any means.
Really?
Not everybody has an office. Everybody has their own situations at home. If you have to be off video, be off video. if I prefer individuals being on video when it applies. I mean, I have a dog and a playpen right behind me. So there's circumstances that are all over as far as individuals, but I think it just really depends on the type of role that you're applying for, honestly, or the role that you're actually going to take part in, because we do still are very front facing with clients. Not every company has that, but we do have quite a bit of client facing roles. So.
Yeah, I would love to hear from Francesca, because you think financial services, I got to have this top button all done. So how are you doing with it? What's going on?
I think I would have to agree with almost everything Todd said. I mean, a lot of those standards that we had in the past, they are not as relevant today. But the reality is I don't know what it's going to be like when we get back to an office, right? I think there's a lot of grace given for the fact that we're all home. Lori was talking about the dog barking earlier, and we don't apologize for things like that anymore. It just barks, and you got to keep moving on in the call, because otherwise you would constantly be apologizing for things like that. And so there are moments, right? If we're meeting with a client over video or something along those lines, yes, I know people are dressing up a little bit more for those things. But for day of internal calls, I mean, I was on a call the other day with one of my vice chairs, and she was in a hoodie. And that would have been something I would have never expected to see before. And it's interesting because we're talking a lot about just like attire from the professional standpoint. I think one of the things that I get more concerned about as we bring in so many staff every year is just how they communicate in the professional landscape, because that is the part where I'm still learning, and I've been at this for 15 years, right? And so when we're in an apprenticeship type model, they're supposed to be learning from those above them. The fact that it's only over video right now, we're in this virtual space, they don't know when to ask questions, when not to ask questions. Like, that piece is the part that probably gives me the most concern about our entry-level employees and our interns coming in, is that they feel comfortable enough to say what they don't know, and that we're able to prepare our current people enough to engage with them in a level that will help train them along the way. We'll see how all this goes when we get back to the office. And I will say this too, we've already stated that our business model is going to change because we've learned to work differently. So even when I say when we get back in the office, pieces of this will still stay. It'll be very interesting to see how it evolves.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you hit a good point there as far as like training your internal staff already, how to engage with future employees or future candidates once they come face to face as well. I think that was one big thing that we looked at when preparing the virtual internship program. We had a separate training just for the hiring managers. Like, how do you interact with a virtual employee? Because a lot of them have never been used to that. So I think that's even more of a key point. It's not the new individuals that are coming upon the business. It's actually the people that are within the business and preparing them and training them and upskilling them to help prepare them, because this is new to them and they haven't. And now, so I think that's the biggest hurdle to overcome.
Yeah, we could probably talk about this all day, right? I mean, that's there's a lot to it. There is a lot to it. Hey, I would love to hear in some of our final minutes here, just some of your, greatest lessons that you are going to carry forward. So what have you learned over the last month or two in terms of these newer things that you've been working on and doing with your students, with recruits? And what do you think is gonna stick around? Let's start with Lori.
Okay, so what did we learn? What's going to stick around? One, I would say, when we're making sure our programming is relevant to what's happening right now, and then making sure that once we plan an event, that we do a great job of marketing, because just sending out, a general email blast may not work. We may need to target it to a particular major or a particular school and things like that. Also, definitely meeting students where they are. Where are they? They're on Instagram. And so the idea of, we've had quite a few invitations where students have asked us to be on their Instagram Live, or we've led the charge. And so continuing to partner with different student groups to do those kind of Instagram Live events, continuing to innovate, whether we're at home or whether we're in the physical office, we still want to be developing new programs and ideas. And so continuing to take that piece forward. and meet people where they are, I think is really key, and definitely leveraging technology and all those things, but not putting our foot on the brakes as it relates to programming, continuing to do the programming as if we are still in the office. I think that's another big thing. And, being a career coach, what I've been telling everybody is don't put the brakes on your job search. What's going to happen in 2021 is we're going to have a class that's going to graduate in 2021 that's going to need our help and support. And so how are we going to help and support them? And so thinking of ways that we can do that, as well as our class of 2020 and our current students. So thinking about all those things, that's what we'll be moving forward with in 2021.
Thank you so much. I love it. Todd.
Lori hit the key word, continue to innovate. Honestly, I love that phrase, because I think that's where we really need to think about continuously thinking outside the box. I think being in this virtual environment, a lot of companies, a lot of schools, whomever, haven't been in this predicament before. So you're always thinking, you're always pivoting. So I don't want to go back to necessarily the norm as it is, because we've been able to be a lot more successful, reach a lot more students, a lot more schools in this virtual environment. So continuously innovate, continuously to think outside the box, and prioritizing time. A lot of times with my campus recruiters, they're constantly in airports, they're flying all over the country. They've actually been able to spend more time with candidate engagement than ever before, answering emails, getting back to candidates, where sometimes those emails get lost in the inbox because they are constantly on the move. So making sure as we go back to a normal on-campus recruitment, and we're still going to have a digital side, but our on-campus recruiters being able to prioritize that time so they don't lose that aspect, because that's the key as far as overall recruitment, constantly engaging with candidates, making sure we're responding back to them, driving them to the right job requisitions, whatever the case would be. So time management, even though it seems very easy, that's going to be a crucial point, is how we move forward, is how you go back, kind of balancing that travel schedule with the candidate engagement moving forward.
Thank you. Francesca.
Yeah, I continue to agree with Todd. I think the other piece that I see staying for us is just that we have just found so many synergies in some of these joint events. And I know there's been some comments over how, we can't track some of these things, but I will tell you, for just our general brand awareness, like I said, when we can get some of our best people in front of, and some of our top people too, right? Our CEO has been very great about being available to be able to engage on some of these platforms that she would have never been able to do that with, just because she can't be everywhere. And so I know that's a piece that will continue to stay for us. I think we'll continue to ask our recruiting team to diversify this virtual piece versus in person. To Todd's point, we've learned we don't have to be road warriors anymore. And so their ability to focus on partnering with the student to help them find the right career path has just increased our brand and our engagement level so much in the past 6 months. It's something that I've been very proud of. So I know that piece of diversifying that will continue to go through.
Excellent. And Saskia, you get the last word.
I think what's really stood out for me is that we are in a people business. Technology is the tool, but at the end of the day, it's all about relationships. And so not losing that human dimension, I think, is key to our work. I think I've been a little surprised. I should have known this, but people get overwhelmed and disengaged and paralyzed when there's so much negativity, and with the news about the jobless rate and unemployment and all this and that. I thought we were going to be overrun. I thought the floodgates would be open and we would be hit hard with lots of students. We took away fees for alumni. Come back, we're here to help you. And we really have not been taken up on it. And so I think just doing whatever we can to get the message out. There are still opportunities. Employers are hiring. Don't give up. There's hope. I think that's what we're really going to be emphasizing in 2021.
Awesome. Well, thank you, all of our panelists. You've been fantastic and have given a lot of really practical tips, and it's been great to hear about your experiences. There certainly have been some really important lessons learned, and I'll be interested just to follow each of your stories to see how this next semester goes. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you to the attention of our entire audience today. We really appreciate you being here with us today. And hopefully we'll see you around again sometime soon. We have a couple sessions still this week. There are a couple of other free sessions this week. Please check out the NACE website and the professional development section events. And that also includes next Monday, we have a meetup with Shawn session. It's a critical conversation around what some career centers are doing on Black Lives Matter movement. So until I see you all again, I hope you have a great day. Be well, be safe. We'll see you again soon.
We would like to thank Career Fair Plus for sponsoring today's program. We would like to thank the participants for attending today's session. This officially concludes the event, and you may now sign off.